Oftentimes we'll talk about how comic books or graphic novels are a great way to get kids interested in reading. This book does the opposite effect, but for the better. Hear me out. Miles Morales suspended. Kids know Miles Morales. They know Spider-Man, but they aren't going to be immediately attracted to poetry. And if you say it's a Spider-Man book on poetry, kids are going to avoid it like a cheap suit. However, this book is not all poetry. It's also got some illustrations. It introduces a brand new Miles Morales bad guy, but it's also got conventional text that has a narrative device. But it also has pages that just have maybe a word or two that are dangled out. Or maybe it has art, like a blackout poetry. This book is so hard to describe, and initially I didn't want to read it because I don't like poetry. Poetry is like kryptonite to me if I were Superman. But I had COVID, so I'm like, well, I gotta read something. So I'm in the basement, and I've got Suspended in my books that I have to read, and it's great. But it's so great and so outside of the box that it's a little hard to describe. It's one of those books that's going to be great when kids get into it, but kids may not get into it because they're going to open up a page and say, this is poetry. I don't like poetry. Blah. Let's find something else to read. But it's a great book because it builds the narrative so strong, because the poetry works in effect with the pictures, the illustrations, the blackout poetry, and the regular paragraphs, the typical sentences, and that it makes the story stronger and more suspenseful and much more interesting, because Suspended, you think it's all about, oh, Spidey's suspended. No, Miles Morales is suspended from school. But in the course of his in-school suspension, he discovers a brand new villain. And it is a great book. I encourage you to check it out. Look past the poetry, because it's not all poetry. It isn't. There are poetry elements in the book. But get past it and you'll find a Spider-Man adventure with Miles Morales that will blow your socks off. It's going to be great for middle school kids all the way through high school kids. This is one of those rare books that really jams into the high school audience, because once you get past that crunchy poetry exterior, it's a fabulous book that especially those older kids in high school, they're going to latch onto, realize, and understand it. And they'll be much the wiser. And you middle school kids, if you can latch onto it, then you're ahead of the game. Check it out. It's not going to be on the top of your list, but it's a great book, even if you don't like Spider-Man. It does the opposite effect of comic books and graphic novels, because you're jump in for the Spider-Man, say it's poetry, but you poetry people, jump in, and you'll find a great Miles Morales tale. It is Miles Morales Suspended. Going to be great for ages 11 and up.